66 million people in the United States live in rural areas, and I am one of them. That is 1/5 of the population in the United States. Today, I'm going to share with you some of the reasons I love living in a rural area and some of the problems that come with living too far from town. I hope you'll stick around. Some might say that I have the best of both worlds. I live almost off grid, which means I don't have a lot of bills out here. I have my own water well, so I don't have a water bill. I have my own sewer lagoon, so I don't pay for sewer. And we're still allowed to burn trash where I live in a burn barrel with a wire cover to make sure things don't blow out to start a fire. We recycle everything that we possibly can. And that saves us a lot of money not having those regular bills out here. We're also not policed a lot about the different rules out here. We don't live in a city limits. We only have county rules, and they're kind of fast and loose, which means we may go a long time without mowing our grass. No one is going to come out here and knock on our door. There's lots of things like that we don't have to comply with by not having neighbors or not having those guidelines, like if you live in the city limits. And those are things that I really enjoy. I also enjoy the peace and quiet. I enjoy the solitude, and I enjoy the independence and the privacy that goes with living in a rural area. I was raised in a rural area and I'm very comfortable there. Some people, when they come out to visit, they just comment on how quiet it is. And it's something that they're not really used to, but they always seem to comment on it and say how nice it is. If there is not a moon or a partial moon, it is really dark out here. There are times you cannot see your hand in front of your face. If the power goes out or if you step outside, it is that dark, like you're inside a cave. And I know that sounds really strange for someone that doesn't live in the country, but if you live in the country and you're a long ways from the city lights, you know what I'm talking about. So there are some wonderful pluses like that living in the country, but there's also some things that people might not feel comfortable with. One of them is our fire department is volunteer and it's 7 miles from here. And if you have a fire, it's going to be a while because they have to call everyone. They have to go to the station. They have to get in their vehicles and they have to come out. So you will be trying to put out your own fire for a while before they get here. We've had that happen several times. My father's sheep shed burnt down and we were out there fighting it with a garden hose until they got here. Also, his hay shed burnt down and there was no water hose close enough to be able to fight that, so it burnt completely to the ground by the time the fire trucks got here. We're also at least 15 to 20 minutes from a local community hospital, which means they don't have all of the services that you might need in an emergency. So you have to weigh the emergency. Is it something that you need to get there in 15 to 20 minutes, maybe for an EpiPen or allergic reaction, something that you know they can handle and you can't make it an hour into town? Or is it something that is serious enough that you know you need to make it that hour into town because they're not going to be able to handle your emergency and they're going to have to get permission to transfer you, which takes even more time. I have been in both of those situations before with family members. So you really have to weigh the consequences of what type of medical emergency you are having before you decide where to go or even to call that ambulance, because again, that ambulance is going to take a while to get here.
This is what used to be my old well that went with this property. It was filled in before I was born. But the cool thing about what they used to do back in the olden days is when they built something like this, they would put a date. As you can see, it's like August 1963. And then they would put their initials in the cement. That's KAR, and it looks like MPR, and I can't read the rest of it anymore. But it's wearing off. That makes me sad. But this was the old well on my property. So as you can see, it didn't get put in until somewhere in the 60s.
We do have about 3 different lakes within about 30 minutes of our home, which is nice. 2 of them have camping areas with electricity. One of them is an old fashioned fishing lake. It doesn't even have dumpsters, and you carry out the trash that you carry in. I feel like I'm spoiled because I am used to these wide open spaces. And every time I go to the city and I see everybody going to the park, and I know that they are going there to try to get some feel for nature and wide open spaces, I just feel a little selfish sometimes because I can have that every single day where I live. And if I want to go to a camping area or go to a lake, I only have to travel like 30 minutes and you have almost the whole thing to yourself. We also have lots of wildlife in the area. These are our 2 little kittens that were born a few weeks ago, but we also have a resident turtle that shows up to eat out of the cat food bowl. They say that box turtles will stay within 1 mile their entire lives, and we see this one quite often. I also love being able to pick fresh fruits and vegetables that have had no chemicals sprayed on them out here. We have sand plums that grow in the ditches. I pick dandelions and make dandelion bread. I also am picking green apples to make green apple crisp. I recently did a video on how I make that. It is one of our family's favorites. And I also harvested some wild lettuce and made some wild lettuce tincture last summer. So that's some of the fun things I've been doing in retirement. One of my absolute favorite things about summer is listening to the cicadas. And our yard is so peaceful and so calming. We can sit out here and just relax and listen to them. The mosquitoes really haven't been too bad this summer, so I feel like we've been rather fortunate about that. But sitting out in the yard and just smelling the fresh air and listening to the cicadas and sitting around my garden and my flowers, it just is my happy place. I would love if you would share with me in the comments below. Do you live in the city or do you live in the country? And where is your happy place? This is why you will see so many of my videos done in the morning when it's really bright, because look how dark it is outside. It is like pitch black out there. And I absolutely love living out here. No, I don't get scared. A lot of people ask, don't you get scared living out there? No. And my husband is gone a lot. He's not home right now. He gets home late. A lot of times he works second shift, and I'm perfectly comfortable out here. I'm not scared at all. I've lived in the country so much of my life that I actually feel a little scared when I live in town. I don't feel comfortable leaving my windows open at night in town where I do out here where I live. And a lot of the sirens and a lot of the honking and a lot of the loud cars, they keep me from sleeping well. when I'm staying in the city. Out here, it is very quiet. You will hear coyotes once in a while, and sometimes we can even hear them sitting in our living room. We can hear them outside. But other than some animal noises like that, it stays pretty quiet. So when my husband and I got together, he actually had a house in the city, and I was not willing to give this up. I still had kids in school, and I was not going to take them out of the school that they had been raised in. I went to the same school, kindergarten through 12th grade. I know that's sometimes unheard of, but I wanted that for my kids. And I was not going to give up the farm life to live in the city. So he was given the option to move out here. Now, he's lived in the city most all of his life, other than spending some summers at his grandparents' on the farm, which he loved. And he was fine with moving out here. So I'm going to let him tell you how he feels about living out here in the middle of nowhere and what his first impression was of us when he came out here and where we live. For those of you that have not met my husband, this is Brent. It is almost 10 o'clock at night. He just got home from work, and I am going to ask him some of those questions that we talked about. He doesn't know what I'm going to ask. So,
Little worried.
okay, so when you first came out here and saw where we lived when we were dating, what did you first think?
I liked the peacefulness. I lived in the middle of a city of nearly 500,000, and there was always sirens, there was always things going on, and I liked the peace.
And what did you see when you first drove in the yard?
Two goats, one on one end of a piece of cardboard and one on the other end. And it was kind of like Lady and the Tramp. They were eating it coming towards each other. It was surreal.
So how do you feel about living out here now?
It's still peaceful. I work in Wichita every day, and I come home and I hear the crickets and the tree frogs and the cows several hundred yards away mooing. Just the peacefulness. I really like that.
Can you see us having any other home base in retirement besides here?
I'm kind of a beach bum, so it wouldn't bother me to be in a city on the beach. But if that's not an option, then no.
And you mean full time?
Yeah,
Full time on the beach. Okay. And so how far do you have to drive to work?
about an hour.
And does that bother you? Having to drive an hour each way?
No, it's I listen to my podcast. I'm kind of a boring nerd there, and things like that. Sometimes it can be a little rough, and like coming up, I'm going to have about a 13-hour day at work because of some new equipment we're putting in, and we've got a lot of people from out of town coming, and they got them hotels, and they offered me one, and I took it because I don't want to work 13 hours and drive an hour home, then get a few hours sleep and drive an hour back.
So what about driving home in the dark this late at night? Because I was telling them how dark it is out here.
Bambi. Bambi can be very destructive, and they most of the time, from what I've seen, people don't hit deer. Deer hit people. And I've been broadsided. You just recently got broadsided by a deer. The deer can be horrible. I used to be, when we first were dating, it was terrifying because of all the deer. But now it's just I've learned to where I can see them from fairly far off, and I've gotten used to it, but I'm still very cautious. About 7 miles from home, my speed drops about 20 miles.
I personally now can't ever imagine leaving here except to travel. I feel like this is a really affordable home base. It's also a home base that I find relaxing and enjoyable. And I think it's important for us to have a home base that we want to spend time in our retirement. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I always enjoy the time that you spend with me. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you soon.